It has begun. Time Lord Victorious, that is, which kicked off in earnest this week with the first releases. But it's an expensive game to keep up with all of it. Not everyone will be able to. But don't worry, I'm here to help. This video is the first in a brand new series on this channel. Each week that there is at least one Time Lord Victorious release, because there's not one every single week, I will be creating a video at the end of the week detailing all of the bits that tie into the overall Time Lord Victorious plot, things that I think are relevant, little bits of facts that we learn, basically what we learn in those stories. For those of you that may not be able to pick up that particular story that came out. Now, I'd still recommend picking up the individual stories if you can afford them and if you are interested in them, because there's going to be a lot of good writing in there and I would hate for you to miss it. But for those of you that can't get absolutely everything, I wanted to provide a kind of service for you so that you can fill yourselves in on the bits that you were missing and what was happening and how it all interacts and meshes together. So that's how I'm going to be covering the event over the next several months. So buckle in and welcome to the very first edition of the Time Lord Victorious Canon Update. Now, if you recall my news video back when they released the timeline of releases for Time Lord Victorious, you'll remember that there was one outlier right at the beginning of it. A Dalek Awakens, the Doctor Who escape room that apparently tied into Time Lord Victorious, that had been released way before even Time Lord Victorious got announced. This is probably the one bit of the event that I might not get to at all myself. I haven't been to it. I'm certainly not going to be going anytime soon due to the pandemic. I don't want to risk that at the moment. If it's still running early next year, I might go along. But for now, I haven't seen it. So this is all kind of second-hand information for this section of the video. I took the chance to speak to several people that have been to the event, but they went quite a long time ago now. It was right at the beginning of the year. I think it was sort of February, March time, I think, that they went. Maybe even January, I can't remember. But it was before Time Lord Victorious got announced, so they weren't particularly looking out for any links to Time Lord Victorious because they didn't know that Time Lord Victorious even was a thing at that point. So there may well be things that people that go nowadays might pick up on that I don't have the information for here. If you know of anything, please do put them in the comments below of how it links more into the Time Lord Victorious overall scheme. What I did get from the people that went, though, was a little bit of a basic plot. Essentially, you are part of a team that is on a spaceship that has got a human colony suspended in suspended animation, and a Dalek, hidden away somewhere, starts waking up and powering down the spaceship to kill everyone on board, as Daleks do. So you, as the player, have to solve the puzzles, get onto the ship, and defeat the Dalek, and save everyone on the ship. Now, my first thought when putting this video together was that maybe the Dalek on the ship is the Dalek that we saw in the fairly recently released trailer for Time Lord Victorious, the one floating in space, you know, the one. Maybe at some point that gets picked up and then ends up on this ship. It's complete supposition at the moment, but I think it's a good theory that might fit. The one floating in space looked a lot more damaged than the one on the ship, so that's maybe an argument against it. The one piece of information we do have that concretely connects it to the event, though, is from the official Doctor Who website, which has released a section of the site that details various paths to help you follow the event by detailing the order of releases to follow a particular group or characters. And under the Dalek path, this escape room actually comes last in terms of the Dalek continuity of the event. And interestingly, has the text, "The last survivor of the Dalek Time Squad takes control of the Starship Future." The Dalek Time Squad is referred to in the blurb for the book All Flesh is Grass as reaching the Dark Times, and in the blurb for the audio Mutually Assured Destruction as fleeing the Dark Times. So, if this is both the Dalek from the trailer and the last remaining Dalek from the Time Squad that the Emperor sends back to the Dark Times, it's possible that we're in a bit of a bootstrap paradox situation here, where the message from the Dark Times that the Emperor is going to receive in the short story The Last Message, which will be coming from one of the Eagle Moss releases, is going to be sent by one of the Daleks he sends back because he received that message. That's all speculation at the moment, and we will have to wait and see when those releases come out. we also have The Defender of the Daleks issue 1 from Titan Comics out this week, which sees in the first issue of this comic plot the 10th Doctor being recruited by the Dalek Emperor to help defeat their greatest enemy. The intro blurb page kind of tells us where this fits in from the 10th Doctor's perspective, which is apparently right after his previous Titan Comics adventures with the 13th Doctor. But which ones? So far, we've had a 4-issue story in the 13th Doctor comics where the 10th Doctor and Martha, stranded in the 1960s during the events of Blink, team up with 13 and her fam. They part ways in the final issue of that, but Titan have announced another team up between the two Doctors that won't be out until November, which sees them come up against the Sea Devils. Perhaps this picks up after that as yet unreleased story from the 10th Doctor's perspective. It would kind of make a bit more sense because at the start of this Time Lord Victorious comic, Martha is nowhere to be seen and 10 isn't even really wondering where she is. To me, that, and actually just that he's not wondering where any of his companions are, indicates that this is probably taking place during the time when he is travelling solo, probably during the Year of Specials. The Doctor starts the issue on the floor of the TARDIS and knows he has some missing memories which he attributes to a paradox of some kind. We know that that paradox is probably him meeting his future self. He does not know this. What's interesting here is that we've never really seen the aftermath of these multi-Doctor meetups. I mean, we know they mostly don't remember stuff when they do meet up with each other. Well, most of the time.
You remembered being me, watching you doing that.
But we don't usually get to see how that presents immediately after the adventure. Here, we get to see him wondering why he's got a hazy memory. It's a nice touch. Exiting the TARDIS, he finds a group of Daleks waiting for him. So, he leaves. But the same group are everywhere he lands, and they want his help to defeat their greatest enemy. Now, given what we know about the story going in, I had assumed this would be the Keturah, the big bad of the event bestowing death upon the universe. But it is in fact the Hond, which appear to be big, slimy, kind of clay face looking creatures. There's a Batman reference for you, DC fans. The Hond died out in the Dark Times, according to the 10th Doctor, so what are they doing here, and will they play into other aspects of the Time Lord Victorious event? These are questions we don't yet have the answers to. The Daleks take the Doctor to Skaro, where he meets the Emperor, sporting the big old gold-domed design from the 60s TV comic strips. We also meet the Dalek strategist, a Dalek even older than the Emperor, who resides in an older design of casing that doesn't have flight capabilities and carries the scars of all of his previous battles. None of the Daleks are aware of the Time War, which the 10th Doctor puts down to the same paradox that left him with missing memories. The issue ends with the Doctor and Dalek strategist exploring the Vault of Obscenities on Skaro, somewhere even most Daleks don't go. It ends with them being confronted by what we presume is one of the Hond. And the final release this week that ties into Time Lord Victorious is the Doctor Who Annual, and one particular section in it, The Guide to the Dark Times. This is presented as a newspaper article in the Dark Times Times. And it's written by one Melody Malone, yes, River Song herself.
Hello, sweetie.
And despite it being a more factual piece, albeit written from a fictional character's perspective, it gives a lot of interesting information. It refers to the Keturah crisis intensifying after the Doctor's interventions, presumably referring to stories that we have yet to see. It also goes into a bit of the history of the Keturah, that they discovered they had the power to end or limit life and roamed the universe deciding how long each species should live. Sometimes through discussion with the race, sometimes just by wiping them out straight away. It also reveals how various Dark Time species that we've heard about throughout the show's history reacted to them, often retconning the motivations and origins of these species. The Rachnos, for instance, apparently went into hibernation, to be discovered millions of years later by the 10th Doctor, in order to avoid the touch of death by the Keturah, and the great vampires struck a deal with them that meant they would have to feed off the lives of other species in order to remain immortal. What it doesn't reveal is how the Time Lords reacted. only that it was before they had mastered time, and it was before they had developed regeneration. We also find out about the Dalek Time Squad, referenced in other media's blurbs, and that this consists of the Time Commander, the leader loyal to the Emperor, the strategist, who we met in this week in the first issue of the Defender of the Daleks comic, the scientist, with its partial red casing and knowledge of temporal science, the executioner, whose name I suspect says it all, and of course, a drone. Finally, we get a little bit of information about Brian the Ood. It's confirmed he comes from the time period when Ood are slaves, but he's not one, and indicates that he may have a bit of a split personality, with his alter ego named Mr. Ball. If he bursts into song at all, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that alter ego is Michael Ball.
This is me.
And that is all the things we learned this week, at least all of the things that I think are probably relevant to the event as a whole. There aren't any more instalments of Time Lord Victorious released until the 17th of September, so there won't be a canon update next week unless they, throw in a surprise release or two. It's always a possibility. They have said there are still more announcements of releases to come. But as it stands, there won't be one next week, but I'll be back for another episode the week after. I really hope this has been interesting to those of you that aren't getting every single release of Time Lord Victorious and still want to know what's going on and how it all interconnects. I hope that's been useful to you. If you did find it interesting, perhaps you'd consider generously hitting that like button, subscribing for more videos like this, generously sharing it around the social interwebs, all that jazz. And I will see you for another canon update in a couple of weeks' time.